You thought you knew everything about your relationship. You trusted your partner, you shared a life together. But what if the truth is way bigger than you ever imagined? When Emily discovered the shocking reality of her husband's affair, she thought she had already seen the worst, but what she uncovered was so much more than she expected. The betrayal wasn't just about one lie, it was something deeper, something far more devastating than she could have ever prepared for. Stay with us till the end, because the truth is about to turn everything upside down. Emily had always thought her marriage to James was rock solid. They had been together for 8 years, and in that time, they had built a beautiful life, a loving home, two children, and countless memories that seemed to solidify their bond. From the outside, they were the perfect couple, admired by friends and family. But Emily couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. It started subtly, with James coming home later than usual and spending more time on his phone. At first, Emily told herself it was just work stress. James was always busy with his job, and she knew that he had a lot of responsibilities on his plate. But the late nights grew more frequent, and the tension between them began to build. She found herself waiting for him to come home, only to be greeted with silence, long hours spent apart in a house that once felt full of love and laughter. One night, Emily came home early from a friend's dinner party. It was supposed to be a surprise, a way to spend time together when James had said he'd be working late. She walked in, expecting the house to be empty, but instead, she heard muffled voices from their bedroom. Her heart skipped a beat, and she froze. The conversation she overheard didn't make sense. It was James's voice, but it wasn't a work call. He was talking to someone in a way that sent a chill down her spine. There was an intimacy in his tone, something she hadn't heard in years. Emily hesitated for a moment, unsure of whether to confront him right then and there. But curiosity, mixed with an unsettling feeling, got the better of her. She crept quietly to their bedroom door, and what she saw through the crack in the door would haunt her forever. There, in their bed, was James, not alone. A woman was with him, holding him, laughing together as though they had shared a history Emily had never known. It felt like the floor had been ripped out from beneath her. The betrayal she saw in that moment was far bigger than she could ever have imagined. It wasn't just an affair. It was something deeper, more intimate than she could comprehend. Her mind raced as she processed what she had just witnessed. She felt sick to her stomach, the kind of shock that paralyzed her. How long had this been going on? Was she just a fool, blind to the signs? She couldn't breathe, couldn't think. For a moment, she was frozen in place, her heart pounding in her chest. The anger began to rise within her, and then the tears came. She couldn't confront him now, not like this, not after seeing that. Emily turned quietly and walked out of the house, her mind whirling with questions she didn't want to ask. She didn't want to face the truth, but she knew she had to. She drove around aimlessly, the weight of what she had seen sinking in deeper with every passing second. What did this mean for their future? How could she trust him again? How could he do this to her, to their family? Emily knew she had to talk to him, to confront him, but she wasn't sure she was ready. How could she even begin to process what she had just witnessed? What could he possibly say to make this right? The more she thought about it, the more she realized how deep the betrayal went. It wasn't just the affair. It was everything she had believed in, everything she had built with James. And now, it felt like it was all falling apart. She eventually found her way back home, but James had already left by the time she returned. She sat in the living room, her head in her hands, trying to gather her thoughts. Her mind kept replaying the scene in the bedroom, the intimacy between them, the way she felt like an outsider in her own marriage. It wasn't just about the affair. It was about the secrets, the lies, the part of their life that Emily had never known. She knew she had to face him. But how could she ever look at him the same way again? How could she ever believe him after this? The truth was much bigger than the affair. It was a betrayal that shattered everything she thought she knew about her marriage. The silence in the house was suffocating. Emily sat in the living room, the weight of what she had seen still heavy on her heart. She hadn't expected to come home that night to find her marriage shattered. The image of James with another woman, his laughter and closeness, played in her mind like a broken record. She knew she had to confront him, but a part of her still hoped it was all a misunderstanding, that there was some rational explanation she hadn't considered. But deep down, she knew the truth. There was no way to ignore what she had witnessed, and yet she couldn't bring herself to face him. She spent the night in restless sleep, tossing and turning, each dream laced with anger and confusion. She didn't want to believe it, but her heart and mind were already telling her the same thing. James had betrayed her. It wasn't just an affair. It was a complete betrayal of everything they had built together. The next morning, Emily found herself standing in their kitchen, staring blankly at the cup of coffee she had made. She hadn't been able to eat, and the thought of facing him again sent a wave of nausea through her. The woman she had seen in their bedroom kept replaying in her mind. Who was she? How long had this been going on? Was this just one woman, or were there others? These questions haunted her, gnawing at her from the inside. Emily felt a deep sense of betrayal, not just from James, but from herself. How had she missed the signs? Had her trust in him blinded her to the reality of their relationship? She had spent so many years building a life with him, thinking they were a team, that nothing could tear them apart. And now, it all seemed like a lie. As the day wore on, Emily finally mustered the courage to call James. Her hands shook as she dialed his number, the anticipation of hearing his voice again overwhelming. When he answered, his tone was casual, as if nothing had changed. It angered her, and she had to fight to keep her voice steady. "We need to talk," she said, her words sharp but controlled. "I saw what I needed to see last night, and I can't ignore it anymore." James paused, and for a moment, she thought he might deny it, might try to make excuses. But when he spoke, his voice was quiet, almost resigned. "I'm sorry, Emily. I didn't want you to find out like this. I never meant to hurt you." The words felt empty to her. It was as if he had rehearsed them, trying to find the right combination of words to minimize the pain he had caused. She wanted to scream, to let out all the hurt she felt, but she knew that wouldn't help anything. She needed answers. She needed the truth. "Who is she?" Emily asked, her voice cold. "Her name is Lisa. It's been going on for a few months now. I didn't want to betray you, but I don't know what happened. I got caught up in something I shouldn't have," James admitted, his voice cracking slightly. Caught up? Emily couldn't believe what she was hearing. Caught up? Was that what he called it? Being with another woman in their home? In their bed? The pain in her chest was overwhelming. "You don't get to say that to me," Emily snapped, the anger rising in her throat. "You don't get to apologize and act like it's that simple. You betrayed me. You lied to me for months, and now you're telling me it just happened?" "I know it doesn't make sense," James said, his voice pleading now. "I made a mistake. I love you, Emily. Please don't leave me." It was the words she had always wanted to hear. The words she had hoped to hear when they were facing challenges. But now they felt empty. The love she once had for him felt tainted, as if the foundation of their entire relationship had been built on lies. "You don't love me," Emily said, her voice breaking despite her anger. "You don't love me if you can do something like this, if you can hurt me like this. I don't know who you are anymore." James was silent for a moment. "Please, Emily. I don't know what to do. I've made so many mistakes. I'm sorry for everything." She felt the tears welling up in her eyes, But she didn't let them fall. She had cried enough. "You've made too many mistakes, James. I can't keep doing this. I can't keep pretending everything is okay. You've broken my trust, and I don't know if I can ever get that back." The conversation ended with a strained silence, and Emily put down the phone, her heart pounding in her chest. She wasn't sure what to do next. Her life, their life, had been flipped upside down in an instant. And for the first time in a long time, she didn't know what the future held. The betrayal felt bigger than she had anticipated. It wasn't just about the affair. It was about everything they had built together. The trust, the promises, the years of love that now seemed like a distant memory. The pain of it all was overwhelming, but she knew one thing for sure. She couldn't keep living in the past. She had to make a choice. She couldn't undo what had happened, but she could decide how to move forward. The days after the confrontation felt like a blur. Emily went through the motions, getting up, going to work, and pretending to be okay when everyone around her assumed that she was fine. But inside, she was falling apart. Her heart felt heavy, as if it carried the weight of 1,000 unanswered questions. The truth she had uncovered about James and his affair had turned her world upside down. Everything she had thought she knew, everything she had believed in, was now in question. Each day, Emily tried to piece her life back together, but it felt like a puzzle with missing pieces. She spent her nights lying awake, staring at the ceiling, trying to make sense of what had happened. Why had James done this? What had she missed? How had she been so blind to the signs that were right in front of her? As she tried to go through the motions of her day-to-day life, Emily found herself consumed with thoughts of James and Lisa. She couldn't shake the images of them together, their laughter, their closeness. She kept wondering how long it had been going on, how many lies had been told, how many moments had been shared that she had never known about. It was like a dark cloud hanging over her, suffocating her with every breath. But amidst the pain and the anger, there was something else, an unfamiliar sense of clarity. Emily realized that she had been living in a bubble for so long, wrapped up in the idea of a perfect marriage, a perfect life. She had convinced herself that everything was fine, that they were happy, when in reality, she had been blind to the cracks in their relationship. The affair had shattered the illusion, but in some strange way, it had also given her the opportunity to see things more clearly. For the first time in a long time, Emily took a step back and started to focus on herself. She realized that she had been so consumed by trying to make her marriage work, so focused on being the perfect wife, that she had neglected her own needs, her own happiness. She had spent years pouring her heart into someone else, and in the process, she had lost sight of who she was. It wasn't easy. There were days when the grief of betrayal was overwhelming, when the sadness of it all felt unbearable. She missed the person she had once been, the woman who had confidence, who had dreams, who wasn't afraid to take risks. But slowly, Emily began to reconnect with herself. She started taking small steps to rebuild her life, things that had always been put on the back burner. She signed up for a fitness class, something she had always wanted to do but never had the time for. The exercise didn't just help her body, it helped clear her mind. With each session, she felt more energized, more alive. It was like a reset for her mind and body, a way to release the anger and frustration that had built up inside her. Emily also began to rediscover her passion for painting, something she had loved doing in her younger years but had abandoned over time. She set up a small space in her apartment and started creating again. The act of painting gave her a sense of control over her emotions, a way to express the things she couldn't put into words. It wasn't about creating a masterpiece. It was about reclaiming a part of herself that had been lost for too long. As the weeks passed, Emily began to find strength in her own resilience. The more she focused on herself, the more she realized that she didn't need James to be happy. She didn't need his approval, his love, or his validation. She was enough on her own. She was worthy of love and respect, and she wasn't going to settle for anything less than that. The anger and the hurt still lingered, but they were no longer all-consuming. Emily started to see that this wasn't the end of her story. It was just a chapter. The betrayal, while devastating, had given her a new sense of perspective. She had the power to choose her own path, to create the life she wanted without being held back by the past. One evening, as she sat in her apartment, looking at a painting she had just completed, Emily realized that she was no longer the woman she had been when she found out about the affair. She was stronger, more independent, and more aware of her own worth. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, she felt ready to face it. She wasn't afraid anymore. She had survived the worst of it, and now she was reclaiming her life. She knew that healing would take time, but she also knew that she was capable of it. She had found the strength to let go of the past, to forgive herself for the mistakes she had made, and to move forward. Emily had learned that, even in the darkest moments, there was always a way to rebuild, to rise again. The future was uncertain, but Emily was no longer afraid of it. She was ready to face it head on, knowing that whatever came next, she would be strong enough to handle it. As the months went by, Emily found herself becoming more and more independent. The wounds from her betrayal had not yet fully healed, but she was learning to live with them. She had spent so much time wallowing in the pain of James's affair, but now she understood that healing wasn't about forgetting or erasing what had happened. It was about moving forward despite the scars, finding peace in the chaos, and embracing the future, no matter how uncertain it seemed. One morning, as Emily was heading to work, she caught a glimpse of herself in the mirror. Her face was tired, and her eyes still carried traces of sadness. But there was something different about her now, something stronger, more resolved. She was no longer the woman who clung to her past, afraid of what came next. She had spent enough time crying over what she had lost. Now it was time to focus on what she could gain. At work, Emily threw herself into her job with a renewed energy. She had always been dedicated, but something had changed within her. The pain of her personal life had given her a new perspective on her professional life. She wasn't just going through the motions anymore. She wanted to prove to herself that she was capable, that she could excel on her own without relying on anyone else. Her colleagues noticed the change, and one of them, a woman named Sarah, commented one afternoon, "You've really been killing it lately, Emily. I haven't seen you so focused and driven in a long time. Whatever you've been doing, keep it up." Her words were a reminder of how far Emily had come. She smiled and thanked Sarah, but inside, she felt a deep sense of pride. This was her doing. She was rebuilding her life one step at a time, and every success, no matter how small, was a testament to her strength. Outside of work, Emily started to embrace new experiences. She reconnected with old friends, people she had lost touch with during her marriage. She spent time with her children, watching them grow and thrive. The bond she shared with them was a source of joy that she hadn't fully appreciated before. They were her rock, and she was determined to be the mother they deserved. Strong, loving, and unwavering in her commitment to their happiness. One weekend, Emily decided to take a trip on her own. She had never traveled by herself before, always waiting for James or someone else to plan the trips. But this time, she decided to take control. She booked a weekend getaway to a peaceful beach town, just a few hours from her home. It wasn't a luxurious vacation, but it was enough. Enough for her to recharge, to step away from her everyday life and clear her mind. On the drive to the beach, Emily felt a sense of freedom that she hadn't experienced in years. The weight of the past was still there, but it didn't feel as heavy. As she drove along the coast, with the ocean breeze in her hair and the sun warming her face, Emily realized that she had the power to create her own happiness. She didn't need anyone to complete her. She didn't need anyone to validate her worth. She was enough on her own. When she arrived at the beach, Emily spent the weekend exploring the town, sitting by the water, and reflecting on everything that had led her to this moment. She spent hours walking along the shore, letting the sound of the waves calm her mind. For the first time in a long time, she felt truly at peace. During her trip, Emily also took time to journal, something she hadn't done in years. She poured her heart out on the pages, writing about her pain, her hopes, and her dreams. She wrote about James and the betrayal, but more importantly, she wrote about her journey of healing. The words flowed easily, as if her soul was finally ready to speak. Writing became a way for her to make sense of everything, to process the emotions she had been bottling up for so long. By the time Emily returned home, she felt a sense of clarity that had eluded her for months. She wasn't healed completely, and she knew the road ahead would still be difficult. But she had taken a major step in reclaiming her life. She was no longer a victim of betrayal. She was a woman who had faced the hardest challenge of her life and had survived. Her perspective on love had changed as well. She wasn't rushing to find someone new, but she had opened herself up to the possibility of love again. Not because she needed someone to complete her, but because she was ready to share her life with someone who truly deserved her love and trust. She knew that trust, once broken, was hard to rebuild, but she also knew that she was worthy of real, honest love. Love that respected her and valued her as much as she valued herself. The future was still uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, Emily felt hopeful. She had survived the darkest moments of her life, and now she was ready to face whatever came next. She wasn't defined by her past. She was defined by her strength, her resilience, and the choices she made to move forward. Emily's life had changed in ways she hadn't expected. The pain of betrayal was still there, but it no longer controlled her. She had learned that while betrayal could break you, it didn't define you. She was no longer the woman who clung to a marriage that wasn't right for her. She had discovered her own strength, the strength to rebuild, to rise above the hurt, and to reclaim her life. As she walked through the journey of healing, she learned the importance of self-love, something she had neglected for years. It wasn't about seeking validation from others. It was about realizing her own worth. She had spent so much of her life being someone's partner, being a wife, and in that role she had lost herself. But now Emily had found herself again. She had reconnected with the passions and interests she had abandoned, the dreams she had put on hold, and the woman who was more than just a reflection of her marriage. She spent her days pursuing new opportunities, rediscovering hobbies she had long forgotten, and reconnecting with her inner strength. She had become the woman she needed to be for herself, not for anyone else. The lessons she learned were hard-won, but they were invaluable. She had learned to trust again, but most importantly, she had learned to trust herself. And as time passed, Emily realized something important. Forgiveness wasn't for the person who had hurt you. It was for yourself. By forgiving James, not for him, but for her own peace of mind, Emily had let go of the anger and resentment that had once consumed her. She no longer allowed his actions to control her emotions. She had taken back her power, and that made all the difference. One evening, as she sat at the kitchen table with her children, laughing and sharing a meal, she realized how far she had come. It was the simple moments like these that made her appreciate life again. She had been so consumed by the betrayal that she had forgotten the beauty in the small, everyday moments. Now, she cherished them more than ever before. The truth was that life would never be the same. The scars from James's betrayal would always be a part of her, but they no longer defined her. She had rebuilt her life, and in doing so, She had discovered a strength she never knew she had. She was no longer the woman who had been broken by betrayal. She was the woman who had risen from it. Emily understood now that no one, not even someone she loved deeply, had the power to make her feel unworthy. She was worthy of love, respect, and happiness, and she was determined to create a life where she could be proud of who she was, no matter what had happened in her past. Her future was hers to create, and she was ready for whatever came next. As she walked through the final steps of her journey, Emily realized that this wasn't just her story. It was a story that could resonate with anyone who had been hurt, betrayed, or lost. It was a story of resilience, of strength, and of the power to heal. And as she looked forward to her new life, she felt a deep sense of peace settle over her. This was the beginning of her new chapter, and she was ready to embrace it. If you've been through betrayal, heartbreak, or any kind of struggle, remember that you have the power to rebuild. Don't let the past control your future. Like and share this story if you believe in the power of healing and self-love. And if you've experienced something similar, leave a comment and share your journey. Because we're stronger together. Let's rise, heal, and grow.